Peace Now. My name is Trudy Quaife. I'm a member of Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace. We're a local organization of friends and neighbors. We've been advocating for peace and justice for well over a decade. I'm your host today, and I'm joined by Imam Faisal Ahmad and Joe Lombardo. Joe Lombardo is a member of Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace. He's also co-coordinator of UNAC, which stands for United National Anti-War Coalition. Imam is also director of a school.
Yes.
So we'll start right in talking a little bit about your background. Could you tell us where you were born, where you grew up?
Sure, Trudy. Thank you so much for having me on the program today. I'm a U.S. citizen. I grew up in the United States my whole life here in the Capital Region. I came here when I was 3 weeks old from Australia, where I was born, and I spent my youth here and graduated from college here in the Capital Region area. I started work as an engineer for IBM, and I got married. And my wife and I, we went on a spiritual journey, and we traveled to the Middle East, to Syria, Damascus, and I studied theology and Arabic language there. And I returned about 6 years ago, and I've been an imam in Texas as well as in Connecticut. And recently I came back here to my hometown to be an imam and teacher here, and I started the Fiqh Institute, which is a seminary for training future leaders and imams and spreading knowledge.
Mm-hmm. Well, could you tell us a little more about Islam? I think there's a lot of confusion today. I don't think people really know what it's about.
Yes, absolutely. Islam, it comes from a root word which means peace. You probably heard the word shalom, and Hebrew and Arabic are very close to each other. And salam means to be at peace. And Islam, it means to lovingly embrace God's teachings and to believe in Him and to make Him the goal of one's life, seeking through that to have eternal happiness in the afterlife, in the Day of Judgment. So Muslims, we live in this world trying to better ourselves and to live a moral and spiritual life in consciousness of God and making Him the center of our life. And we hope that because of that we will get eternal happiness in the hereafter. And so we have to be good people and good to each other, good to our neighbors, because we believe that there will be a day when everyone will be accountable, and we should be patient and we should be kind, because our deeds are all being recorded and they'll be accounted for on a day in front of God. So we try to make that day, the Day of Judgment, the focus of our lives, and it's basically the main purpose of Islam for a Muslim. The main purpose of his life is to live a life of God-centeredness, where we worship, and everything we do is an act of worship. So Islam is it was communicated by our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, but we don't believe it's a new religion. We believe that Abraham and Moses and Jesus, peace be upon them all, were callers to the belief in one God, and we just believe that we are a continuation of that Abrahamic tradition, and we love all of God's prophets, and we love and respect the followers of those traditions. We believe that they were on right guidance as well, and we just believe that Islam is a continuation of that Abrahamic monotheism.
Okay. Since September 11th of 2001, Muslims have been attacked both by local authorities and national authorities, and it's really, I think, the lives of Muslim families have changed since then. Could you talk a little bit about what's happened since then?
Yes, I believe that these tragic events that have taken place in the United States have really distorted the image of Islam for many Americans, and unfortunately many the common person doesn't really know a Muslim personally, or they haven't had the opportunity to study about our religion. And also there are opportunists who have purposely or willfully or perhaps unintentionally distorted the true message of Islam, taking verses of the Quran out of context and perhaps not understanding the true intentions of our religion. So it's been a difficult time for the Muslim community, but also an opportunity to reach out and to try to help people better understand our tradition. And one of the issues that have been in the media a lot is, of course, Islam and terrorism. Does Islam condone terrorism? And this is one of the issues that we've really tried to, I've tried to, through my teaching my students, is to properly understand religious texts in their scholarly context and not to rush to take a verse out of context or misunderstand it. And as a Muslim, we believe that we live in this world. We should try. Our goal is to attain peace with ourselves and between us and God and with us and other people. And the way that we achieve that is through fighting our desires. And the word jihad, which is always in the news these days, it means to struggle against one's evil inclinations. And there's many passages in the Quran that talk about the word jihad, referring to fighting our whims and our desires and trying to live a better moral life. And for example, the Quran, it says, whoever struggles on our way, we will guide them to our pathways. And this struggle here, this jihad, it means struggling to better oneself and to become a better person.
Okay. In 2004, the Muslim Solidarity Committee was formed in the Capital Region, and Joe was one of the founding members. So, Joe, could you tell us a little bit about that and some of the things that the committee has worked on?
Well, yeah. Faisal might not remember, but the first time I met him actually was when there were two members of his mosque that were the mosque on Central Avenue, who were arrested by the FBI. The FBI had done a sting operation, and they arrested the imam of that mosque, who was named Yassim Aref, and Mohammed Hussein, another man from that mosque. They basically did a sting operation where Hussein's business was in trouble, and they sent in a man to say he can help with this business, but really what he wanted to do was launder some money and so forth. And he was really an FBI informant, and the FBI has done this in the Muslim community and in mosques and businesses and so forth, and schools and Muslim student associations throughout the country. They've sent people in and tried to get them to do or say or bribe them to do or say something that in some way can be seen as illegal. So they claim that some of this money that was going to be used for the business, that this agent that was in there was really going to use it for a weapon. And it became very, very clear that the people who were arrested were just thinking that they were doing some kind of business transaction. And in Islam, borrowing money and so forth has a different connotation. You don't do interest and so forth, but the imam usually sits in and says, this really makes sense by Islamic law. Mm-hmm. So the imam was involved in these talks. The FBI the whole time was listening in and recording and trying to get them to be on tape where the FBI agent would say something about what he wanted the money for, so they could get them on that. Of course, they never really got that. In the case of Yassim Aref, for instance, they had to say in court, well, although the recording device worked all the time, for the one time we told Yassim about this scheme, it wasn't working. But the FBI agent said, but I was listening to it in the car and I heard it. But in the aftermath of 2001, it was very easy to convict Muslims. They were saying this was a Muslim attack on the United States, And it started a whole anti-Muslim feeling that has just really grown since today, up into today. We in the anti-war movement understood that part of this was to build a case for war against Islamic countries.
Yeah.
And so when we started seeing the attacks on Muslims here, we did our best to support them. And so when all the international cameras are standing in front of that mosque, me and two other anti-war activists came to the mosque to see what we could do and can we give some support. And that's where I first saw Faisal. I said, I went up and said hello to him. You know, I want you to know there are some people in this country that support you and so forth. And out of that grew a meeting. And then later on, when the trial started for Yasin and Mohammed, the Muslim Solidarity Committee was formed, and some really great people, lawyers and others, joined it. And it is primarily non-Muslims, although there are Muslims that are in it, to try to show our solidarity with the Muslim community and our friendship. Because the only way we are going to end wars, the only way that we are going to stop the kind of killing that we see in our own streets is through friendship and understanding of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very important thing. So that became the basis of the Muslim Solidarity Committee. And we became a model for the whole country. We then formed something called Project Salam because we understood what happened here was not just unique to Albany, it was happening everywhere across the country. Hundreds have been arrested in these kinds of stings. They're kept in special Muslim prisons called CMUs, Communication Management Units, where they're kept in very harsh conditions. And the whole buildup of anti-Islamic feeling has been a cause for, has been justification for war and has built up a war sentiment here. So that's the origins of the Muslim Solidarity Committee,
Okay.
and we hope other people will join us.
Yes. Imam, could you tell us, living here in the capital region, have you felt that Muslim families, yourself and other Muslim families, have been targeted because of your religion?
Well, I think in a more broader sense, like we feel the general media and through internet and through our relations with other Muslim communities, we do see a lot of hate attacks that are happening to mosques. There's been more some harsh words that have been said to some members of our community. The women, especially our sisters, they cover like a nun covers with a scarf out of modesty. Have been told, like my sister was told once in the mall, you know, you're in America, you don't have to wear that. And she said, I wear this out of my love of God and out of my devotion to Him, but nobody's forcing me to wear it. So there's been questioning, and a lot of course, there's a lot of misunderstanding out there about Muslims. So it's been a hard time for Muslims, but also I think an opportunity to kind of reach out to people like Joe and open-minded, great people that care about others, and kind of work together to dispel some of the stereotypes. And Joe has been instrumental in that, and others from the Solidarity Committee. And we're trying to continue that, hopefully, with more programs and more work together, hopefully.
There have been other people in this community that have been attacked. In fact, Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace had a member who was a Muslim, who was Imam Umar, who was also attacked, and they tried to get him because he owned a rifle and he didn't have a permit for it. But really they were attacking him because he said some things about Muslims aren't responsible right after 2001 for what happened, and really if you want to end terrorism, the U.S. has to have better relationships with people around the world and so forth. And coming from a black man and a Muslim, that was unacceptable, so they went after him and we built a defense campaign for him. There have been others in this community. There was another man actually from the same mosque whose name was, his last name was I'm forgetting it now, but he owned a pizza place on Delaware Avenue.
Oh, Yagi.
Yagi.
Yes.
And they arrested him because someone said they heard him say an anti-American statement, which just wasn't true, and they broke up his family, and he was eventually deported after spending road, who was a student, who was just taking pictures. And someone said, well, what are you taking pictures of? Maybe he's taking pictures of something to blow up or something. And so they put him in jail for several months out in Attica, and then they eventually deported him back to Pakistan. And so there have been many cases. At one point, Muslims in this area were asked to go in and kind of register, and the danger here is that the same kind of danger that happened with Jews in Nazi Germany is that a whole religion will be scapegoated, and good Americans need to come together and say, this is not acceptable. We respect everybody's culture and everybody's religion.
I would, one of the things that I think leads to a lot of this, these entrapment schemes and so on, is the suspicion and the fear that is out in the general public. And as we say in Arabic, a person is an enemy to those that he doesn't know. And part of what I like to talk about when we get a chance to explain Islam to others is that in Islam we don't worship this other god. They sometimes you hear that we worship a moon god or something like that. Allah is just the Arabic word for God, and in the Aramaic the words that Jesus spoke was Eloh. So it's the same root. We believe in one God that is beyond our comprehension in His perfection, and we worship Him. We don't. We believe He's the same God that has sent all of the prophets to mankind. He's a loving and merciful God, and we want to see Him in paradise. And so that's a common misconception. And another is that Muslims our religion encourages violence and imposing Islam, or forcefully converting people to Islam. And two texts I think will help clarify this. Once the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was traveling with some of his companions. Some young children were with him, and they stopped a camp in Arabia. And the children, they saw a nest with some little birds, little chicks in the nest. So they went, and being kids, they grabbed them and started playing with them. And so the mother bird started flying around and crying out. Something happened to her chicks. And Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, saw this, and this is recorded in Bukhari, which is a very authentic text. And he said, who has terrorized this mother bird? And then they found the kids playing with the chicks, and he said, return the chicks back to the nest of their mother. And on other narrations, the Prophet, peace be upon him, he saw a mother looking for her child, and she was crying. And when she found her child, she immediately grabbed the baby to her chest. And he said, do you think this mother would ever put her child in danger or in a fire? They said no. And then he said, God has more love for His servants than this mother has for this baby. So he emphasized the concept of love. And this is an aspect of Islam that we rarely hear about or see about, that love is very important in our religion. Prophet Muhammad said, none of you believe until you love for your brother what you love for yourself. And and that's a tradition I think that a lot of people believe in. And none of you believe until his neighbor feels safe from his harm. Our tradition commands us to fulfill our covenants and our treaties, and as a Muslim living in the Western society, we have to fulfill our civic duties and obey the laws and not harm others. And this is part of our ancient tradition. I'm not saying this just because I live in America in the 21st century. This is what our tradition has taught historically, and this is why you hear about, I don't know if you heard about Saladin and Richard the Lionheart. And Saladin was so noble that when he was injured, the enemy was injured, he helped him to take care of himself and go back to his people. And he was dignified, he was noble. And Islam is a noble religion. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was a very noble, and he had a character that he exuded mercy and peace to everyone around him. And that's how the Quran describes him. It says, you have been sent as a love and a mercy from humanity. So I think that it's important that for anybody who wants to properly understand Islam, to really see the whole picture, read the whole life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, read the whole Quran, or at least have somebody who has more experience with the verses to kind of put everything in context.
It would be good if they could talk with you, I think.
So,
Oh.
how do you see groups like ISIS that
Yes.
that seem to have a different idea?
I just want to let you know we're down to about 7 minutes
Okay.
here.
Okay. Yes. Well, as for Muslims, we believe in the hereafter, and we believe that seeking power is not the way to achieve true success in the afterlife. It says in the Quran, that is the abode of the hereafter. We give it to those who do not seek greatness in the earth and not corruption, and the end will be for the pious. So it's teaching us that our intention should not be to make ourselves great. We should be humble, but we should have piety. We should be righteous, and if God will give us that abode in the hereafter, if we are patient, if we are righteous, and seeking to have power, seeking to have authority, those are worldly things. Those are for people who want money. Those are for people who want position. Those are people who want the trappings of this life, and that's not the life of a true Muslim. So if that is what the intention of any person is, whether they do it in the name of Islam or they do it in the name of any other ideology, we hear about bombings of abortion clinics. We hear
Right.
about Timothy McVeigh and Breivik in Norway and many other people. They may do these actions, but I really believe that these are not truly religious acts. I believe that there must be some desire for worldly power, and that's why they do those things. Because Islam teaches us that our intention has to be sincere for God and not for power or authority or revenge. And even revenge, if we hold back our anger and we're patient, then we know that God will have an ultimate justice. And if we're patient for that, that would be the way of the character of a believer. And if we lack faith, we don't believe in this hereafter, we don't believe in the day of judgment, then we act irrationally.
Now, we're rapidly running out of time here,
Yes.
but I wanted to ask you about Sharia law, because that's one thing that right-wing talk show hosts are always telling us, that the Muslims are taking over, Obama's
Yes.
a Muslim,
Yes.
and they're going to impose Sharia law. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Yes.
briefly.
Sharia actually, again, the literal meaning, linguistic meaning, is a pathway to water, and water is the source of life. What we believe is that Islam, as a divine religion, it was revealed by God for the benefit of mankind, to guide them to what is best for them, to achieve the ideal society, the goodly life in this world and in the hereafter, and to purify themselves from evil characteristics, and to elevate them to nobility. And so Sharia, it is not different than American law. A lot of American law, it's been studied that the English common law, which is the basis for the U.S. Constitution, was derived from elements of the Islamic law of Spain, when Spain at one time was a Muslim society. And there's been a lot of crossover of legal concepts, the concept of innocence until proven guilty, the concept of freedom to believe or not believe, the concept of the inalienable rights is actually found in Islam. Islam teaches that all of Sharia, Islamic law, in other words, is to protect faith, life, property, honor, and mind. And we hold these truths to be self-evident, that every person is endowed with unalienable rights, which is freedom and life and pursuit of happiness. And there's been studies that actually show that there's been a direct crossover between Islamic law and the U.S. Constitution, which I believe is is something that we should try to keep the spirit of the Constitution. There's a lot of people nowadays who want to kind of erase some of the amendments, especially Islam, when it comes to Islam. And I believe that those aspects of the Constitution is what makes it great and what makes living in America a very positive thing, because we have these ideals, and we run the risk of losing them in times of fear, in times of
Yes.
war. And the work that you guys are doing against war is, I think, very noble, because you're maintaining these ideals, and you're kind of teaching that we should reach beyond our fear and be rational, intelligent people. And I think that's a really wonderful thing.
We're actually going to have to start to wind this conversation up. So one of the things I wanted to ask you both is how can we all work together? How can we support our Muslim friends and neighbors? How can we show them that we do care?
Yes. Well, I think the important step is always knowledge. Because when we have these irrational fears, or we have fear, or we can be controlled by manipulated. But when we learn and we overcome those, it's like the monster in the closet. And when you open the closet and you turn the light on, it's gone. So I think we kind of have to do that as a society. We need to reach out and learn more about others. Muslims are almost 2 billion people. 1 in 3 people on the planet is a Muslim. So we really should learn from each other. And I think meeting one another, going to a mosque, learning about what is Sharia, which is for a Muslim is something very peaceful, something beautiful it's part of Sharia is washing and making ablution and praying in the morning time when everything's quiet and hearing the birds. That's what Sharia means to a Muslim.
One
So I
of the
think
things that has been a silver lining of this whole Islamophobia hysteria in the United States is that many non-Muslims have met Muslims.
Yes.
And when you meet Muslims, you see that together we are human beings with the
Yes,
same aspirations,
yes.
the same desires. We want to do
Right.
well for ourselves and
Same
our
love for our
families.
children, right?
We have compassion for each other. We have compassion for all people. And those are basic human qualities, human nature. When you see someone hurt, is to help them. Why are people getting PTSD when they come back from war? Because we're not meant to kill each other.
Yes.
And when you start meeting people and you start seeing, well, this is another culture maybe this person comes from, and there's some things I never thought of. I have learned from that. It is a beautiful thing, and they have learned from me. And when you start understanding that, you understand that our unity and our solidarity is much stronger than this Islamophobia. And so I would encourage everybody that wants to understand this is to come together, join a group like the Muslim Solidarity Committee or Bethlehem Neighbors for Peace. The websites are will be shown on the screen.
Okay.
And I think that's the best thing that people can do, and the best way to overcome this really time of hate and fear that we're going through right now.
Okay, I'm sorry to say that we're just about out of time. I thank you so much for being here today,
Thank you, Trudy.
Imam.
Thank you, Joe, for
And you, Joe.
having me.
And thank you all for joining us, and I hope you'll join us again for future shows, and hopefully we can have the Imam back again because there were so many more questions I had to ask.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, and I wish the best for everybody who listened to this program, and I hope that we can continue the conversation soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks very much.